Um, Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Drudge. I am the host of this webinar today on Haiti and the perils of practicing journalism there. I am a retired foreign correspondent. I live in San Antonio, Texas, where I am the president of the local SPJ professional chapter here in San Antonio. I worked as a foreign correspondent for about 30 years and in about 70 countries around the world, but never to Haiti. I never got there. But anyway, it's an honor for me to be here today, and I hope we have a really great conversation. Um, I want to make sure as we go along that if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. You can type them in, and then we will invite you, or we will answer your questions for you. And I encourage you, please take every opportunity to join in. And we're leaving the chat box free to share information. That's not going to be for your Q&A. This is being recorded, and it will be placed on the SPJ International Community's YouTube channel. The co-chair of our international community, is Dan Kubiski. He is putting an URL into the chat and that will give you access to the community's website and the YouTube channel. And you can also sign up for our weekly newsletter, which is very informative. I encourage you to do that if you have not done so already. So let's move on to our guest, who is Macollvie Neel. She is the executive editor of the Haitian Times, and an expert on all things Haiti. And we are looking forward to her views and opinions on things. I'd like to begin the conversation by stating that Haiti doesn't get into the news very much here, at least here in the United States, unless there's a natural disaster of some kind or a political turmoil or assassination or something like that. And then when foreign correspondents do visit, they spend a few days and do a few reports and go away, and Haiti kind of drifts off of the news scene. And so there are many unanswered questions about the situation in Haiti. Um, Covering the day-to-day life of Haitians is vital to understanding what is happening there. Filling in those gaps are Haitian journalists who face threats from the government and gangs, and they help tell their stories in the Haitian Times. And Macollvie is editor of the Haitian Times. She's also a writer and editor and a communications consultant. She's focused on elevating voices that are not normally heard in day-to-day reporting. She leads the editorial content strategy of the Haitian Times and coaches reporters on bringing forward the nuanced experiences of Haitians and inside and outside of Haiti. And she has appeared on various broadcasters, including NBC, CBS, NPR, and other outlets. And it is a pleasure to have her here today. So I think we can begin by letting me ask you to tell us, before we get into the situation about Haiti specifically, tell us about how you got into journalism and why.
So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Dan, for organizing this. Hello, everyone. I can't see you, but if you're there, I appreciate you making the time to spend with us today. You said a lot here, Mike, especially the way you described parachute journalism. So I hope we get to chat a little bit more about that later in this hour. This is actually my second tour of journalism, if you will. I was a journalist the first time when I first left college. And I had always loved storytelling. right? I always love stories. I grew up on oral storytelling in Haiti before my family moved here when I was 10. And then I discovered, books and libraries where you can just get lost in stories as much as you'd like, right? And Haitian stories were few and far between. We had some authors that were emerging at the time when I was in college or high school in the late 90s, early 2000s. But I felt like we needed more of those stories out there. And that's how I became aware of the Haitian Times, which is how I got into journalism the first time, right? Um, I'm from Brooklyn or raised in Brooklyn after my family moved here from Haiti. And I just happened to stumble upon a Haitian Times physical like publication at the time. It was a weekly. It was in English. I was able to actually understand and consume it. I was familiar with the style of writing and the way the story was presented, having taken some journalism courses in college at that point. And so wanting to both learn more and get more Haitian stories out there and having an outlet that was doing it in English that would allow me to do that was how I made my first foray into journalism. That experience led to just opportunities to report on Haitians, not just in Brooklyn or the New York area, but in Florida, in Haiti, in France, in other places in the Caribbean. So it really turned into an internship at first, into a 3-year journey that taught me so much about my own culture, about myself, about the Haitian people in general, and about systems, right? And how different things are perpetrated and how communities, countries interact with those systems.
Hmm. You did mention that you have observed at least the phenomenon of called parachute journalism. And I just wonder, how would you rate the coverage of Haiti by major news organizations, both in Europe and the United States?
You have a scale, or do I just pick a number?
I
Um,
guess, however you feel you can answer it.
for the most part, right? I'm gonna say this because there are some outlets, like ours, whose job it is to cover Haitians and all of our developments, right? So putting those outlets aside, the general, call it mainstream view of parachute journalism, um, it's it's to be honest, it's kind of mediocre, at best. There are a few examples of great journalism and continued coverage of Haiti that I think places like the Herald will continue to maintain because that's part of their, purview. They do it constantly, just like
The
we've
Miami Herald, you mean?
yes,
Yes.
we have
Okay.
outlets in Haiti who are, on the ground, who try, right? So I'm not including those in this reaction. The larger, more mainstream organizations with the parachute journalism has gotten from okay over the time that I first started or worked as a journalist to now. I think part of that is because it is harder to have mainstream journalists be placed as correspondents, like you mentioned, you were Mike, in country, right? A lot of these organizations have left Haiti because it's just not safe anymore. Many of them report from other places in the Caribbean, right? Latin America bureaus where they're corresponding with Haitian journalists on the ground who can give them information. But it's very few and far between that you'll see
Hmm.
them
I,
reporting, right? And that is reflected in the journalism I've been seeing. So mediocre, I would say, and then sometimes it's even detrimental in some instances. So an example I can give you is the recent coverage of the Bloc Alley protest movement, this vigilante movement that we saw emerge in Haiti in the spring, right? Around April, May. Folks were fed up. The police couldn't help them. There's no government to speak of in Haiti right now. There's no elected official. There hasn't been since January, right? So we have a Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, who's ruling just by default. We actually sometimes we refer to him as a de facto Prime Minister. There's no president, as you know, since Jovenel Moise's assassination in 2021. So what you have is just like general, it's a vacuum where anything goes, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this context, you have folks who are fed up with the violence, with the gangs that are state-sponsored, loosely state-sponsored, since we don't even know what the state looks like. It's not a functioning entity. Funded by various power brokers, people with deep pockets and all of that. The gangs are doing what they've been hired to do. And so regular people are fed up and they start taking up arms against them and teaching these gangs that they're able to get their hands on a lesson with, stoning, lynching, immolations, really atrocious killings that you would see that are more akin to war crimes or atrocities you might see in like a Gulf War, for example, than a country that's supposed to be like a normal country that's not at war. So folks they rise up, they start taking matters into their own hands and they're fighting back against these gangs. And the covers that I saw, it was late, first of all. And then when it came, it would include things like the description of Boakale even means that were very crude and just left out there without any context, right? So to help you understand, Mike, and our audience, Boakale is a term people use to mean like, they're ready. Yes, there's a sexual aspect to it. That's where the etymology of it is. And so folks were like, pick up your machetes, your sticks, your stones, whatever you can find and get ready. We're going after these gangs that are coming after us, right? So that's the context we framed it at the Haitian Times in when we first talked about Boakale. But some of these other places were just saying, oh, it just means unerect penis, right? But with no explanation of how that translates to people taking up arms and taking to the streets to defend themselves and their neighborhoods in most cases.
And that sounds like what we might call cultural insensitivity or misunderstanding of what the double meaning anyway of that. Yeah.
Yes. So this is where I say sometimes this coverage can become detrimental because you're putting this out in front of an audience that doesn't have a real understanding of Haiti. Yeah. And out there just perpetuates the cycle of seeing Haiti and Haitians as these folks who are just, savage, over like sexualized Black folks.
Barbaric or something. Yeah.
So that's where the disservice is done.
Are there not resident correspondents for Agence France Presse and Reuters and AP? Do they have bureaus and offices in Haiti? Do you know?
I don't know exactly right now what they're all doing, but my understanding in general is that a lot of the correspondents, Haitian or otherwise, have just left Haiti. They're either in the DR because they've been threatened by gangs, or in the US. We know some of them personally.
Right. Dominican Republic, for those who don't know what is DR. Sorry. Go ahead.
Right. I see someone put in the chat that AFP has a correspondent.
AFP has a correspondent. That's why I thought they probably would. I know they've, used to be French, so yeah, it makes sense.
But a lot of it is the reporting. The bureaus, right, are out of Puerto Rico, Latin America, and Mexico, and it's really with the fixers and stringers to say, hey, what's happening? Which is a different lens from being there physically and doing a lot of the reporting yourself.
Yeah, I long time ago worked at United Press International, and we did our Caribbean bureau was in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And people would travel around a lot, and they were, I wouldn't call them necessarily parachute journalists because they did make regular trips to Haiti and Santo Domingo and everywhere else, but it's not the same as being on the ground all the time. Um, I just wanted to know if you could describe for the Haitian Times, do you have reporters in Haiti who they're stringers or full-time correspondents, or how do you get your information from the island?
So, in the middle of the Jovenel Moise assassination, actually even before, right? We're looking at ways to, uh, for our correspondents here in the U.S. to take trips to Haiti and report from there, because that's the old model, right? That's how we all used to do it.
Sure.
In the past, back in the early aughts, the Haitian Times would send reporters for, a year, a month, or however long, right? We couldn't do that between COVID, the assassination, fuel issues, and then cholera that happened. So what we decided to do was to create a boot camp that would train people in Haiti who were looking to become journalists or who had started with some journalism experience to report for us in the way that we wanted news and stories about Haitians told. And so we launched this boot camp in, I want to say January or February 2022. We had something like 80 different applicants. We narrowed it down to 10 where we had our class of folks, right? To teach how to report, American style, if you will. And we ended up hiring about 6 of those folks, right? So right now in Haiti, we have 2 people in Port-au-Prince. We had 3, but one ended up moving to the provinces because it wasn't safe for our family to be in Port-au-Prince anymore. So one in this central part of Haiti. We have 2 in the northern portion of Haiti, in Cap-Haïtien, which has become like a substitute capital, if you will, since Port-au-Prince is a no man's land for many reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, we'll have photographers contribute different things. So in all right now, we have about 5 people who are constantly turning around stories about Haiti and Haitians.
Okay.
And what we had is not just talk about here's the Wakale stuff happening, but it's summertime, it's Fête Champette time. There's the arts and culture piece that so many of our readership is interested in, right? We try to give them a good feel for what's happening in the country outside of the capital, where 200 gangs at the latest counts have taken over those areas, right? We try to talk about what's happening with the tourism, right? With schools, for example, with this transportation fuel subsidies business and how that's handicapping a lot of folks. We talk about hunger and how the natural disasters and the man-made disasters are creating the cycle of food insecurity, where animals and farms aren't able to survive because there's just no infrastructure to provide irrigation, feed, livestock type things we need to support. So that's what our operation looks like out of Haiti.
Okay, well, I want to do a shout out to someone who put something into chat. Sandra Lemaire, who put in that AFP has a correspondent in Port-au-Prince and the AP reports out of San Juan. Sandra is my erstwhile former colleague at the Voice of America, and I think a founder or original correspondent for the VOA Creole service. I'm not sure what Sandra's doing today, if she's still in the Creole service or something else. She's been there a long time at VOA, and so I'm glad you're here, Sandra. And if you want to throw and to anybody, all the participants, please, we want to have your own questions and just throw them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I'd like everybody to chip in here on getting this information. So I'm wondering if you could delve into what your challenges are for your reporters on the ground and for the Haitian Times in general, is trying to figure out what's going on and give the best version of the truth that you can determine.
Yeah. So the challenge is, as we already touched on a little bit, is the general sense of insecurity, right? Haitians like to refer to it as insecurity. To me, it's even deeper than that. It's the equivalent of just, constant rampant violence, if you will. So that means even in Haiti, for our staff that's there, getting out to report on stories is still a very dangerous, hazardous activity, right? So just this past weekend, right? I don't know if you saw the news about all of these people who were fleeing gunfire in neighborhoods around the US Embassy. They went to the American Embassy to seek refuge because they just had nowhere else to turn, right? So the scenes we were seeing on social media, the videos and all of that, just they were heartbreaking scenes of the police using tear gas to disperse them from the American Embassy. But we couldn't send our reporters out there. We told them not to go because it was simply too dangerous for them, right? So what we've had to do, that's a challenge for us, is figure out how to still report that out without showing the photos, the visuals that go along with this. And so that's where our reporters have to work the phones a lot, right? There's a lot of WhatsApp conversations and notes that voice notes back and forth that are traded for them to report the news. A lot of, citizen journalism, if you will, eye reports where we're gathering footage from people that we know or can verify are credible sources, right? So we've had to lean a lot more on people sending us information and telling us what they're experiencing as our proxy for not being able to go there ourselves.
Are there concerns if you put up video of people out on the street trying to flee to the embassy that could endanger themselves by them being identified by the video?
Always that danger, from not necessarily from the folks themselves, like ordinary people who are fleeing, right? A lot of them have bigger things on their minds, frankly. They need a place to sleep, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At least 60,000 displaced people around the Port-au-Prince region, if not more at this point over the past 2 years or so, right? So their concerns are, somewhere to sleep, safety, whatever that looks like, that is not just being shot at and hiding under your bed until the gunfire ceases. Food for little ones, healthcare. There are all these public health issues that aren't being addressed because it's just not possible to travel to the hospital back and forth. The threat is more from, the police, frankly, and agents of the state. The thing with the police is you never know who's working with or lied to a gang or who is just trying to do their job as regular police officers. But we've had photographers and videographers out in the streets that have been threatened or told to show, go through their digital camera and delete, various photos, right? So if that's what they have to do to get back home safely, that's what we tell them to do. Just delete the photo. It's not worth it, right? There's a lot of negotiation that goes on sometimes, or more negotiation that goes on. And that's where journalists like gift of gab, if you will, becomes more important to get someone on your side so you can persuade them to use a photo that they normally would say, no, you can't use.
Are the police going through those photos looking for people? I mean, are they looking for people that they want to go after? I could delve into what are the threats that are posed by these police and the other state security? Did they have plainclothes people running around, pretending to be ordinary citizens, and they're gathering information on people, or what's happening in that regard?
Not that subversive because it doesn't need to be, right?
Mm,
A lot of this violence is, like I mentioned, sanctioned or funded by the power brokers who don't have a justice system to respond to. There's no oversight, there's no accountability from government officials or anything like that. So it's not so much that they even they're looking for folks to then follow up, go after like a CIA operative type thing.
mm-hmm.
This is more a group of police officers who are just like, hey, what are you doing here? I didn't give you permission to take my picture. Just delete it, right? And then it becomes more of a control tactic, right? Like a domination thing, than than an espionage type.
Okay, so if Haitian journalists could photograph a policeman on the street, and the policeman doesn't want his picture out there, and so he'll say, get that off of your phone, or
Yes.
you'll be in trouble. And so that's a form of intimidation, and it makes it difficult, I suppose, to in a way to document some of the things that are going on.
For sure. We
Yeah.
also, like, I know on the US side, a lot of journalists, like, it's great to show scenes like behind the scenes type footage of them in the field doing their work, right? Oh, I'm heading to such and such a place here,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, or here I am, and you're posting on your Twitter and you're engaging with the audience, because right, audience engagement is huge stateside, but they can't do that for reasons of safety, like even more so than some journalists who might try to post it after the fact, right? Because even if they were to do it afterwards, if they are then targeted and something happens, God forbid, there's no infrastructure in place in terms of law enforcement or the justice system to bring people to justice and hold them accountable for targeting or committing a crime against journalists, right? So,
It's they have impunity if
right.
against journalists, or everybody, I suppose, but especially particularly journalists. That I wonder if you could describe the well, the gang problem that exists, and do gangs also go after journalists and intimidate them specifically, or is it just kind of a random thing?
So the thing with coming after journalists and targeting journalists, I think would behoove everyone on this call to recognize is that the violence or threats against journalists is part of just the entire society being under siege, if you will, right? Anyone can be threatened, kidnapped, killed if you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The instances of targeted killings or crimes against journalists are not as they were, say, 20 years ago, when you had someone who was speaking out against whatever the administration at the time was up to, right? This is more like, we're out here in front of this police station because we hear gangs took all your equipment and made off with them, which has happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the police saying, you all aren't allowed to be here, like, leave, right? Words are exchanged, it escalates, and a journalist gets shot and killed, right? Mm-hmm. It becomes more of a hazard of the job in a lot of instances from what we've seen, and just a symptom of the general lawlessness that Haiti is experiencing.
Okay.
I think journalists, similar to the way that we saw essential workers during COVID, if you will, right? Because when you have a situation where only a few types of people are supposed to be out and about, right? Healthcare workers, delivery drivers, um, food workers, journalists, some government workers, these are the folks who are out there to be targeted. So in the past few weeks, we've seen an uptick, an upsurge, if you will, a surge in kidnappings and killings that have restarted after the whole Guacale thing, you know, put a damper on all of that. So now they're grabbing journalists and we're hearing about them. Before that, it was doctors who were being kidnapped, or prominent people who were being kidnapped more than anyone else that we heard of. And before that, it was teachers and students who were being held hostage on their way to school, right? So a lot of it is random. It's gangs grabbing whoever they can find and going up to the line at a bank and just grabbing whoever happens to be within arm's reach and making off with them. We had that almost happen to one of our journalists as he was online at a bank earlier in the year. So to think about journalists being targeted in the sense that we're used to, right, where it's state sponsored, suppression or oppression, I think it's important to open up that lens and understand the context of Haiti in general and see it for the most part as a symptom of just general violence and lack of accountability. The impunity you mentioned, that's impacting everyone.
And just the general social breakdown there. Yeah. I want to invite our participants, please join in for any questions you have. At the bottom of the screen, you see a little icon that says Q&A, and just click on that and type in your questions. We invite you all to become involved, and please ask Macollvie anything you want to know. And so in that regard, I want to, how do I want to put this? What is the effectiveness or lack thereof of any international organizations, whether they be journalistically oriented, like Reporters Without Borders or the United Nations, foreign governments, embassies? Are they helping in any way to cooperate, help work with journalists, and also just help restore some order to Haiti? Is there any role for them?
Again, going back to not thinking of the media situation in an isolated way, right? I think everyone is waiting for the situation in Haiti to get better. And so now we're hearing talks of a potential intervention or armed invasion, depending on who you ask, right, of Haiti that seems to be imminent. It's hard, I think, to think about solutions or working with journalists to help them do their work when no one really can do their work the way they would or should, right? Because even if you were to say, okay, here's what we're gonna do with Haitian journalists and try to protect, there's no one in Haiti itself that can be held accountable or who could have oversight to make sure those protections are properly applied, right?
It sounds like everybody's on their own, pretty much. Yeah. I wanted to mention now we've got in the Q&A, Sandra Lemaire is asking, can you talk about the lack of information, lack of access with regards to Prime Minister Ariel Henry's government, and how that poses a threat to journalism, or does it, in your view?
I guess I'll answer that question from the end to the beginning.
All right.
It poses a threat to our journalism because in many ways, what is Ariel Henry going to tell us that isn't something that's canned, something that is actually news or relevant to the people? A lot of the activity we've seen from his office and from him revolves around different meetings that they're having at the international level with international partners and whatnot, right? It's things that don't really get to the heart of, what is happening with people's day to day, right? So if something happens in anywhere in the country, natural disasters, for example, we had a storm hit a couple months ago, right? That caused a lot of flooding and hurt a lot of people, right? What is this office going to say or do that can't be either verified on the ground, right? Or that will actually be carried out. So there's this general lack of trust anyway about what he is going to say or do, because that level of trust just never had a chance to exist, and it doesn't exist. Like, I know, in the past, journalists have had to be very um, had to keep abreast of what's happening with the prime minister's office, with this government and that government or cabinet. But Ariel Henry's is a one-man show, and what you see is kind of like what you're getting. There doesn't seem to be much more happening underneath there when it comes to the day-to-day developments. So we've had to learn to work around it. We still reach out to his office on Twitter and all of these other places, but it doesn't keep us from doing our work anymore. We just say they didn't say anything publicly about X and then move on to documenting the experiences of the people who are impacted by the news, by the development.
When you reach out to them, do they actually reply, or you just never hear anything back? If you have a question.
Yeah, usually we don't hear anything back. In the past, we would reach out directly to different ministers that were in government, but they too have either left Haiti or they've been sanctioned or their terms expired. So it becomes not worthwhile to reach out to them for on the record comments about new news, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, how do Haitians get information? Who do they rely on to get to sort out what's true and what's false? And do they rely mostly on radio or on print? I don't know if they have do they have internet access? I know it's a very poor country. I don't know how does the average Haitian learn about what's going on?
So yes, Haitians have access to information via radio still. Radio is still king in most places in Haiti. But in terms of a digital divide, so many people are plugged in, right? I don't have the numbers. I don't think anyone in Haiti has the numbers, but pretty much everyone has access to WhatsApp or if not, even if they're not necessarily on Twitter or different platforms, they're on WhatsApp to communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of WhatsApp groups. There's a lot of just radio. There's a lot of YouTube channels for those who do have connectivity that have become very popular. Even TikTok these days is where a lot of folks are going on social media to consume information. And to your point about how to discern what's fact, what's fiction, right? It's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you do get some information, but a lot of it isn't verified. Some of it is doctored, frankly, a lot of times. And so people do become victims as a result. Not to get too deep into it, but one case we see a lot are these scams, these fraudulent schemes that proliferate via WhatsApp and Telegram, where they're pulling people from Haiti into, some of those cases. And even though, yes, Haiti is a poor country, it doesn't mean there's not opportunity there for people to connect or to function.
Okay. So there are social media outlets widely available, I suppose, people do have smartphones and share information, and maybe a lot of it could be that something happens and the basic event did happen, but what actually the facts surrounding it might be all get mixed up in the rumor mill. Is that accurate, what I'm saying?
Think it's the dark ages, right, in Haiti. And this is what the service that I mentioned, right? And this is why it's important for us to have our reporters in the provinces showing people going about their daily lives, right? Like you'll see photos of the vendor, like the Timachan, for example, who's still taking her wares to market, like on her head or carrying it however she can on a truck or a top and stuff. That person is plugged in somehow. She has a phone to be able to keep in touch with, maybe it's her microfinancing organization or friends and family in the US or the Bahamas, different places. So it's important to realize there are opportunities there, especially digitally, right? It's not like there's nothing there. And I think that's a good example of why it's important to talk about things with Haiti other than the violence and political situation in our coverage.
Okay, well, thanks for those insights. I now have another Q&A, a question from Marie Rowland wanting to ask, how do the Haitian public feel about media? Is there a general distrust of journalists, or is there appreciation for a free press and what journalists are doing? What do you say?
That one is a tough one because I can say in the past, right, there was this general, if it's distrust, like apprehension about who you share information with and being featured in the news because people were afraid to become targets of the state, of the government, right? So that was part of the reason why it was always hard to just separate, who's a journalist and a real journalist or who's an agent of um, whoever happens to be in power, right? These days, I feel like from the reports of our reporters' experiences, people are more open to talking about what's happening to them or in their lives. And I don't know if that's a function of just social media where everyone is sharing or oversharing things at all, or if it's that they just there's nothing to lose anymore, right? If you've lost relatives, you've lost, finances, your livelihood. It's like, what else is left? I do feel like folks are much more vocal in many ways, and it might be because they are able to get on their phones and talk about what's going on their own, right? As far as like the free press portion of it, um, that's a that's a weird way to describe what happens in Haiti in terms of the media landscape, because it had always had issues going back decades, right? So I don't know that it's fair to say if people appreciate it or not. I know they love information, they want information, and that's what the radio, some TV, and a lot of online channels are for.
Well, that's very insightful. Now we're getting some more questions into our Q&A box. I urge all the participants, we've got about 15 minutes left, so if you have something you want to ask, please type it in as soon as possible. Sonila Soto asks, are there any specific challenges or risks faced by women journalists reporting in Haiti?
Yes, thank you so much for bringing up the point about women journalists. Um, Again, in general, in Haiti, women are victimized in, I guess, more severely in some ways because of, sexual assault being used as a weapon with the gangs. A lot of times when we report on these massacres, these shootings, these killings happening, um, more often than not, especially this year, there's just been a huge uptick in, women And some men too, like girls and little boys being sexually abused and sexually assaulted during these attacks on various neighborhoods, right? As far as women journalists in particular, yes, it's harder to go out there and take a risk to begin with because there's no protection really available to you. And then just by function of your gender, you might be subjected to sexual attacks. So what we tell our journalists who are women is just not to take that risk. If you're not comfortable being out there, don't do it. So again, we go back and rely on the remote reporting that has to take place to still get some information out there.
Mhm. We have another question from Luc Bonhomme. We've kind of covered this already, but he asked, what do you think about the international media coverage of the crisis in Haiti? Well, I know we've sort of covered that ground. Maybe you tuned in after we did that, but do you have any more to say?
Just that it's been fairly canned, right? People are reporting what happens in at the big meetings, conventions at the UN or Europe or at CARICOM, and just different meetings of heads of state or diplomats, right? They're not reporting from the ground like we are about how Haitians are um, are perceiving what's going on, how they're feeling about it, the level of desperation that would require the type of multinational force that's being considered right now.
I wonder if you could describe the audience of the Haitian Times. Who consumes your news? Is it just in English? Do you have any Creole or French language information there?
So our audience, when Gary Pierre, our publisher and founder, started the Haitian Times 24 years ago in 1999, he did it to make sure people like me, who are a little younger, had access to news about Haiti, right?
Mm.
So that's whom we've grown up with, if you will, as an outlet. There's a lot of Haitian Americans, people who grew up here or were born here, second generation 1.5, who are all over this country in the US and also outside the US more and more, who consume the Haitian Times. We have a pretty strong contingent of folks who have worked in Haiti, so not non-Haitian people, white people who have either studied Haiti or worked in the
Mm.
nonprofit sector there or worked with governments or the diplomatic corps who consume our information. And then there's an academic portion who just need information about Haiti in a way they can process, who come to our site for that, for our content. So,
Okay.
right? And this is why we make the choices we make in what we cover and trying to highlight the humanity of Haitian and giving context and nuance as much as we can, because they're not coming to us sight unseen with no knowledge at all about Haiti, right? They're not a general mainstream audience, if you will. So we have to offer more. We have to go beyond whatever is drawing headlines in the mainstream to keep them interested. And they've told us in audience studies that we've done that they come to our site because we have news they can't get anywhere else. And, we're very proud to be able to do that despite all the different challenges of running media, a digital outlet these days, which you had asked about a little bit earlier, Mike. We're very proud to be able to do that despite all of those challenges, and keep Haiti in the news in that way.
Yes. Now I see posted into chat some information on social media use in Haiti from something called Data Reportal. I'm not sure what that is. Datareportal.com. Anyway, there were 2.45 million social media users in Haiti in January 2022. the number of social media users in Haiti at the start of 2022 was equivalent to 21.1% of the total population. But it is important to note that social media users may not represent unique individuals. See our detailed notes on data about why. Now, there's a link there if anybody wants to follow up on that. I think that we're approaching now the final 10 minutes of our chat. I invite anybody who has any more questions, please put them into Q&A. Macollvie, could you tell us what is your concept of what freedom of the press means and what it means to you?
What I've always understood, freedom of the press, right, is the ability to carry out your work and reflect what's happening in society, right, without you personally being any more targeted than anyone else would be in the general public, right? We're supposed to be sort of like the intermediaries between what's happening in different spaces, different communities, right? And the general society so that we can all have an understanding of each other and general knowledge about each other, right? We're supposed to be the people who help create discourses that can advance our societies. So being able to do that responsibly is kind of how I've always thought about freedom of the press. Okay? Personally, for me, having done this work 20 some odd years ago and then coming back into it now, I think from a reporter standpoint, like being out in the field and being able to do that work without, fear is slightly different from the editor's hat that I wear now, right? Because I feel like a lot of these now, I feel like we have more of a responsibility to think about journalism and the press in a more systematic way in how we cover different communities of people, right? If we're supposed to be the ones, the fourth estate, if you will, who have a say in what the other three do, right? I think like as editors, as newsroom leaders, media leaders, we have to push more for a different way of looking at people and how we cover, whether it's Haitians, Black people in the US, Black communities worldwide, because that's my lens, right? We have to call out the systematic failures that allow the press to become victimized, individual journalists to be kidnapped and killed, and even our outlets themselves to end up dying out because we just don't have the systematic institutional support that we need to survive.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all very interesting, and I really appreciate your insights on this. I think we're going to wrap it up. Nope, sorry, I think I got one more question here. This is Frederick Mooney. With such a hostile environment, do the journalists have a training pipeline, be it formal or apprenticeship, that prepares journalists for such threats? I think he means inside of Haiti. How do they know what to do when confronted with such adversity?
Mm-hmm. So I can speak to what we've done with our group of journalists in Haiti. And what that is different training sessions that we've held over the past year and a half in partnership with people like the ACOS Alliance, with the CPJ, right? Sharing resources, taking their threats very seriously, leaning very heavily on resources such as Lawyers for Reporters to give proper credence to threats that arise, right? To make sure we understand what our responsibility is as a news organization, and then to make sure we pass on that information to our reporters in Haiti about what how to handle different situations where they feel threatened or targeted. So that there are also some I know our reporters have attended some training sessions in Haiti as well, but speaking only for us, from what we've done, we've talked to them about, being able to protect yourself, what to do before, during, and after you go on an assignment, how to escalate things that might seem like they're not that much of a big deal, but that we need to know about because we might be hearing it from multiple people. And then digitally, like I mentioned, what is their responsibility for tweeting or posting things about where they are in the field and what they're doing, and how to weigh that against, the pros and cons of doing that for audience engagement versus their safety. So yes, there's training. They do know what to do. As far as any of that goes, that's a constant reinforcement. As with anything like that, you have to constantly reinforce that, especially when the staff changes. So that's an ongoing part of our work that we do at the Haitian Times.
Well, this has been a really insightful hour, and I'm so glad you could be with us and share your insights on what's going on in Haiti and the state of journalism there. I want to thank you again, and I want to say that to our audience, if you are not a member of SPJ or the SPJ International Community, there is a link in the chat right now that you can go on to and learn all about our activities. We have programs like this frequently. There's a YouTube channel that this program and all the others that are archived will be there. And you can get all that information at the International Community page on the SPJ website. It's in the chat. So click away and join up if you haven't already. It's anybody who has an interest in foreign affairs and international journalism should belong to this group. So again, thanks everybody. Be careful and stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome.